The first time I realized I had been erased, I thought it was a mistake. Not the kind of mistake you make with your hands shaking or your glasses slipping down your nose, but the kind that happens when someone doesn't think you matter enough to notice you're gone. I was sitting alone at my kitchen table when I saw the photos. My tea had gone cold beside me, steam long vanished, the spoon resting where I'd left it. Outside, the afternoon sun pressed gently against the curtains, and somewhere down the block a lawnmower hummed, steady and ordinary. Life continuing, even as something inside me quietly cracked. There they were, wedding photos. My son standing tall in his tuxedo, his bride radiant and white. The smiles were wide, the lighting perfect, the filters soft and romantic. And I wasn't in any of them. Not one. I leaned closer to the screen, scrolling slowly, my finger dragging downward as if I'd missed something. A candid shot here, a posed family portrait there, bridesmaids laughing, groomsmen clapping, the aisle, the altar, the kiss. Everyone was present, except me. At first, I told myself the photographer must not have uploaded the full album yet, that I was jumping to conclusions, that surely I would appear in the next swipe. But swipe after swipe, album after album, my absence grew louder. And then I saw the caption, "The perfect day with the people who truly matter." That was when my chest tightened. Because I had been there that day. I had stood in the front row, hands folded, heart pounding with pride and nerves. I had cried softly when my son turned and smiled at me before saying his vows. I had mattered then, or so I thought. Before all of this, before the edits, before the quiet cruelty dressed up as aesthetics, my life had been simple in the best way. I'm a mother of one. My son, Daniel, is the center of my world, not because I made him that way, but because life shaped us into a team early on. His father passed when Daniel was 10, a sudden heart attack, no warnings, no goodbyes, just absence. I learned how to be both strong and soft in the same breath. I worked mornings at the library and evenings tutoring kids from the neighborhood. I learned how to stretch meals, how to listen when my son didn't want to talk, how to step back when he needed space and step forward when he needed shelter. By the time Daniel was grown, we had a rhythm. Sunday dinners, long phone calls, comfortable silences that didn't need filling. And then he met her. Her name was Lila. The first time he brought her home, I noticed everything. The way she smiled before she laughed, like she was measuring the room. The way her eyes lingered on framed family photos, on furniture, on details people usually skim past. She hugged me warmly, her perfume floral and expensive. "I've heard so much about you," she said, her voice sweet, practiced, but not fake. "Daniel talks about you all the time." That night, I cooked extra, watched her eat, listened to her stories. She complimented my home, my cooking, my son. She called me Mom before the dessert plates were cleared. I won't pretend it didn't touch me. When Daniel proposed a year later, I was thrilled. I cried into my dish towel when he showed me the ring. Lila hugged me tight and whispered, "I'm so lucky to be joining this family." And for a while, it felt true. During the engagement, she included me, or at least she made it look that way. She asked my opinion on flowers, on guest lists, on color palettes. She texted me photos of dresses, centerpieces, invitations. But looking back now, I can see the pattern. She asked, but she never followed through. If I suggested cream roses, she chose blush. If I mentioned inviting an old family friend, the name quietly disappeared from the final list. If I offered help, she smiled and said, "I've got it covered, but thank you." Always polite, always distant beneath the warmth. I told myself it was nerves, wedding stress, modern brides wanting control. I told myself to stay in my lane. On the wedding day, I wore a soft blue dress, nothing flashy. I arrived early, hands trembling just a little, heart full. Lila looked beautiful. When she saw me, she kissed my cheek and said, "Thank you for raising such a good man." The photographer snapped a picture. I remember that clearly. I remember thinking, that one will mean everything to me. The ceremony passed in a blur of vows and tears. At the reception, I danced once with Daniel, just once. He held me close and whispered, "I love you, Mom." I believed him. Weeks later, when the photos went live, I waited patiently, then curiously, then with a growing ache I couldn't name, until patience turned into dread, until curiosity turned into certainty, because you don't accidentally erase someone from every single photo. You choose to. And that was when I understood something important. Lila didn't just remove me from the pictures, she removed me from the story she was telling the world. After I closed the photo app, I sat there longer than I meant to. The house was quiet in that particular way it gets when the afternoon has nearly slipped into evening. The refrigerator hummed softly. The clock above the sink ticked, steady and indifferent. I could smell onions from the lunch I'd cooked earlier, still lingering in the air. I didn't cry right away. That surprised me. Instead, I felt small, not in a childish way, but in the way furniture feels when it's moved out of a room that's already been rearranged without it. Useful once, now inconvenient. I told myself again that there must be a reasonable explanation, that maybe Leela had only posted a preview, that maybe the photographer sent her multiple edits, that maybe my photos were coming later in a private message with a sweet apology attached. I refreshed her page. Nothing. I went to Daniel's profile. He had shared the same album, same photos, same absence. That was the first clue, not the editing, but the silence. Daniel always called me when something felt off, always, even small things, especially small things. But that evening passed without a call, then the next day, and the next. I decided not to say anything yet. I've lived long enough to know that sometimes our instincts need patience to gather their evidence. Acting too quickly can make you look unreasonable, and I had no intention of being dismissed as the emotional mother who couldn't let go. So I waited. Life, outwardly, returned to its rhythm. I went to work, shelved books, helped a young girl with her reading comprehension, smiled at neighbors, paid bills, watered my plants. But something had shifted inside me. Every time my phone buzzed, I wondered if it would be Daniel. Every time I opened social media, more wedding photos appeared, from friends, from family, from Leela's relatives. Group shots, table shots, dance floor shots. I scanned every face. Still no me. It wasn't just that I wasn't centered or highlighted or featured. I was erased entirely. Even in photos where I remembered standing only inches away from the bride, it was as if I'd never existed. My heart started to pound in a way I didn't like. Then came the comments. Such a beautiful family. You can really see who matters most to them. So intimate, just the people closest to you. Each word landed like a pebble dropped into water, sending quiet ripples of pain outward. One afternoon, my sister called. "I saw the wedding pictures," she said carefully. That pause, that was the second clue. "Did you?" I replied, keeping my voice even. "Yes, I just wanted to ask, are there more coming?" I swallowed. "Why do you ask?" Well, she hesitated. I didn't see you in any of them. I closed my eyes. So it wasn't just me. That night, I finally called Daniel. He answered on the third ring. His voice was tired but warm. "Hey, Mom." We talked about small things first, his new routine, their honeymoon plans, the weather. Then I said it. "I saw the photos." A pause. "Oh," he said. "Yeah, Leela's been posting a lot." I waited. Another pause. "Daniel," I said gently, "I couldn't find a single picture with me in it." Silence stretched between us, thick, heavy. "I'm sure it's nothing," he said finally, too quickly. "She probably just chose the ones she liked best." "And none of those included me?" He sighed. "Mom, you're reading into it." That was the third clue. Not denial, but deflection. I didn't argue. I didn't accuse. I simply said, "All right." But after we hung up, my hands were shaking. I began replaying moments from the past year, slow and careful, like rewinding a tape. The way Leela had always insisted on approving photos before they were shared, the way she positioned people during gatherings, the way she gently but firmly steered Daniel away when I hugged him too long. Small things, easy to dismiss individually. Together, they formed a shape I didn't like. A week later, I attended a family brunch hosted by one of Daniel's cousins. Leela was there, glowing, confident, phone always in hand. When she saw me, she hugged me, smiling wide. "Mom, you look beautiful," she said loud enough for others to hear. I smiled back. But when someone asked about the wedding, she pulled out her phone and showed them photos, angling the screen away from me. I noticed. When someone else said, "It was so nice seeing you there," Leela laughed lightly. "Oh, it was so hectic. Everything was such a blur." As if I'd been part of that blur, as if I could be smoothed away. Later, while she was distracted, I leaned over and glanced at her phone. She had multiple versions of the same photos, some with people cropped out, some with backgrounds softened. Edits. Intentional. That was the moment suspicion hardened into certainty. This wasn't about aesthetics. This was about control. And the question I couldn't escape anymore was this. Why did she want me gone, but only where others could see? I didn't confront Lila right away. That wasn't my way. Instead, I watched her, not with bitterness, but with the quiet attentiveness that comes from raising a child and learning how much people reveal when they think no one is looking. I noticed how she spoke about family now. The word had changed shape in her mouth. It used to include me naturally. Our family dinners, when we all get together. Now it sounded selective. Our little family, just us. I noticed how Daniel deferred to her more than he ever had to anyone. When she corrected him, he laughed it off. When she interrupted, he stopped mid-sentence. When she made decisions, he nodded, even when I could see confusion in his eyes. Love can soften people, but it can also quiet them. The real discovery came 2 weeks later, by accident, the way most truths do. I was at the library late that afternoon, helping catalog donations in the back room. The air smelt like old paper and lemon cleaner. My phone buzzed once, twice, then again. A message from a woman I barely knew, Lila's cousin, Mariah. "Hi, Mrs. Carter. I hope this isn't inappropriate, but I thought you should know something." My heart sank before I even opened it. She sent a screenshot. It was a group chat, one I clearly wasn't meant to see. The message was from Lila. I can't believe she still tries to insert herself. I told the photographer to clean up the family shots. This is our marriage, not hers. Below it, another message. I don't want reminders of her everywhere. I want people to see us as independent, not tied to her. My breath caught. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Mariah followed up quickly. I'm sorry. I didn't know if you were aware. I felt wrong keeping it to myself. I thanked her, politely, calmly, and put my phone face down on the table. For a long moment, I just stood there. The room felt smaller, the ceiling lower, the hum of the fluorescent lights suddenly loud, invasive. It wasn't just the editing, it was the intention. She hadn't erased me because I was inconvenient. She erased me because I existed, because my presence contradicted the story she wanted to tell, one where she was the center, the beginning, the authority. I drove home slowly that evening. The sky was streaked with orange and gray, clouds hanging low like they too were listening. When I got inside, I sat on the edge of my bed and finally let myself cry. Not loudly, not dramatically, just the kind of crying that comes when dignity and grief sit side by side. I remembered holding Daniel's hand when he was 5, guiding him through his first school hallway. I remembered standing in the rain at his graduation, clapping until my palms hurt. I remembered every meal, every scraped knee, every quiet prayer whispered over him while he slept. And now I had been edited out, not just from photos, but from a narrative. I knew then that I couldn't stay silent, but I also knew I couldn't rush. Confrontation without clarity only feeds denial, so I waited for the right moment. It came sooner than I expected. Daniel called the next Sunday, asking if I'd like to come over for dinner. Lila wants to try a new recipe, he said. I heard the carefulness in his voice, the way he was bracing for something he didn't yet understand. When I arrived, the house was immaculate, too immaculate. Candles lit, table set with matching plates. Lila greeted me with her practiced warmth. Dinner passed with polite conversation, work updates, travel plans, weather. Then, as plates were cleared, Lila pulled out her phone. "Oh," she said brightly, "I finally got the full wedding album back. The photographer did such a great job." She handed it to Daniel. He smiled, scrolling. I waited. After a moment, I said quietly, "May I see?" She hesitated just for a fraction of a second before handing it to me. I scrolled slowly, carefully, and there it was. A photo I remembered vividly, me standing beside Daniel, my hand on his arm, both of us laughing. Only now, I was gone. The background had been stretched, my arm replaced with air. I looked up. "Lila?" I said softly. "Where am I in this photo?" The room went still. Daniel leaned closer. "What do you mean?" I turned the phone toward him. "This was taken right after the ceremony. I was right here." He stared at the screen. "I remember that," he said slowly. Lila's smile tightened. "Well, I just wanted the photos to feel clean, focused." "Focused on what?" I asked. She shrugged. "On us." Daniel looked between us. "Why would Mom need to be removed?" Lila sighed, setting her fork down. "Because boundaries matter. Marriage means starting fresh. Some people don't know how to step back." The words landed hard. I felt my spine straighten. "Is that how you see me? As someone who needs to be edited out?" Her eyes flashed, annoyance now, not sweetness. "I think you've always had trouble letting go, and I don't want that energy defining our marriage." Daniel's face drained of color. "That's not fair," he said quietly. Lila crossed her arms. "I'm allowed to want a life without constant parental presence." I nodded slowly. "Then you should have said that, not erased me and smiled to my face." The silence that followed wasn't explosive. It was heavy. Truth has weight. Daniel pushed his chair back. "You edited my mother out of our wedding photos?" Lila didn't answer right away. Then she said, "Yes." That single word cracked something open. Daniel stood up so abruptly his chair scraped against the floor. "You didn't even tell me," he asked, his voice low, shaken in a way I had never heard before. Lila's jaw tightened. "I didn't think it would turn into this." "This?" he repeated. "You removed my mother from my wedding photos." She rolled her eyes slightly, a gesture so small, so dismissive, but it told me more than any argument could. "I removed distractions," she said. "I wanted our story to be about us." I placed the phone gently on the table. "Your story already included me," I said. "You just decided I didn't belong." For a moment, no one spoke. The candles flickered softly, their wicks crackling. Somewhere down the street, a car door slammed. Ordinary sounds continued, indifferent to the fracture happening inside that dining room. Daniel rubbed his face with both hands. "Lila," he said slowly, "you never told me you felt this way." She stood up too now. "Because I knew you'd react like this. You always protect her." I felt something twist in my chest, not anger, but sadness. "I have never asked my son to choose," I said, "not once." She turned to me sharply. "You don't have to ask. Your presence does it for you." That was when I understood. This wasn't about photos. It was about control, about rewriting the world so that she was the only constant, the only authority, the only voice that mattered. I stood, smoothing my sweater, steadying myself. "I'm going to leave," I said calmly. "This conversation belongs to the two of you now." Daniel looked at me, eyes glassy. "Mom," I touched his arm. "I love you. That hasn't changed." I did not look at Lila as I walked to the door. At home, I sat alone in the quiet and let the evening settle into my bones. I made tea I didn't drink. I folded laundry that didn't need folding. I moved through my house like a guest in my own life. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. Daniel. He said the moment I answered. His voice broke. "I swear I didn't know." "I believe you," I said. "She says you're overreacting, that it's just aesthetics." I closed my eyes. "Daniel," gently I said, "erasing someone isn't an aesthetic choice. It's a statement." He was quiet for a long time. "I don't know what to do," he whispered. I wanted to tell him. I wanted to fix it. I wanted to protect him the way I always had. But this was a lesson he needed to face with open eyes. "I won't tell you what to do, but I will tell you this. Love doesn't require someone else to disappear." The next few weeks were strained. I wasn't invited over as often. Group messages went quiet. Photos continued to appear online, carefully curated, polished, mother-free. Friends began asking questions. "Were you sick that day? Did you miss the ceremony? You weren't there?" I answered simply, "I was there." And I waited. The action I took wasn't loud or dramatic. It was dignified. When the professional photographer posted a public anniversary highlight, tagging vendors, family, friends, I left a single comment. "Thank you for capturing such a meaningful day. I especially loved the original family portrait right after the vows." Nothing else. No accusations, no explanation, just truth. Within hours, people began asking questions in the comments. "What original portrait? I didn't see that one. Was there another version?" The photographer, unaware of the private edits, responded, "Yes, the full gallery includes extended family photos as well." The internet does not miss details. Screenshots began circulating, unedited photos pulled from the original gallery link. There I was, standing beside my son, hand on his arm, smiling. Messages started coming in, from relatives, from old friends, from people who noticed. Daniel called me that night. "She lied to me," he said. "She told me you asked to stay out of the photos." I felt the final piece settle into place. "I never would have done that," I replied. I know now. I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired. Truth doesn't always bring relief. Sometimes it just brings clarity. The next morning, Lila called. Her voice was sharp. "Why would you embarrass me like that?" "I didn't," I said calmly. "I told the truth. You knew what would happen." "No," I replied. "I knew what was already happening." She hung up on me. That was the last direct conversation we ever had. The fallout didn't arrive all at once. It came in waves, quiet at first, then impossible to ignore. Family group chats that had been silent for weeks suddenly came alive. Aunts I hadn't heard from in years reached out, not with gossip, but with concern. "Are you okay?" "We saw the photos. I'm so sorry. You didn't deserve that." I answered each message with care. I refused to paint Leela as a villain, even though it would have been easy. Instead, I stuck to what I knew was true. I was there. I love my son. I didn't ask to be removed. That was enough. The truth has a way of standing on its own legs. Daniel came by one evening unannounced. I was washing dishes when I heard the knock. 3 soft taps, the way he used to knock when he was a teenager and needed comfort more than permission. When I opened the door, he looked smaller somehow. Older, too. "I needed to see you," he said. I stepped aside and let him in. He sat at the kitchen table, elbows resting on the wood I'd refinished myself years ago. He stared at his hands for a long moment before speaking. "She admitted it," he said quietly. "I didn't ask who she was." "She said she felt threatened, that people respect you and she didn't like feeling compared." I leaned against the counter, drying my hands. "I never asked to be compared," he replied. "I know. That's the worst part." He told me how arguments had followed the online discovery, how lies had unraveled too quickly to patch back together, how he began noticing other things, small manipulations, subtle rewrites of memory. "She said you criticized her constantly," he said, "but I couldn't remember a single time." I nodded, because it didn't happen. Daniel exhaled sharply, like someone realizing they'd been holding their breath for months. "She wanted control, not partnership." We sat in silence for a while. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, grounding us. "I'm not asking you to fix this," he finally said. "I just needed to know you're still here." I reached across the table and placed my hand over his. "I never left." The consequences didn't stay private. At the next family gathering, a cousin's baby shower, Leela arrived alone. The room shifted when she entered. Conversations paused. Smiles tightened. No one confronted her directly. They didn't need to. She felt it. I watched from across the room as she tried to insert herself into conversations, her laughter a little too loud, her posture stiff. She kept checking her phone, scrolling through comments she couldn't control anymore. People had seen the original photos, they'd seen the edits, and more importantly, they'd seen the intent. Later that afternoon, as I was helping clean up plates, my sister leaned over. "You handled that with class," she whispered. I shrugged lightly. I just didn't lie. That night, Daniel called again. "We're taking space," he said. I didn't ask what that meant exactly. Space can mean many things. Sometimes it's distance. Sometimes it's clarity. "I'm proud of you," I told him. "For what?" he asked. "For choosing truth even when it hurts." The next few weeks brought quiet changes. Daniel stopped posting couple photos. Leela's online presence shifted, fewer smiles, fewer captions about love and unity. The curated image cracked. And I learned something important during that time. Public consequence doesn't always look like punishment. Sometimes it looks like exposure, like losing the power to control the narrative. I didn't celebrate that loss, but I didn't mourn it either. Healing didn't arrive with an apology. It arrived quietly in the small spaces where peace is earned rather than announced. After Daniel and Leela decided to take space, weeks passed without updates. No dramatic declarations, no public statements, just absence. And in that absence, I began to feel something I hadn't allowed myself to feel before: relief. Not because my son was hurting, that part still sat heavy in my chest, but because the tension that had wrapped itself around every interaction was finally gone. I returned to my routines: morning walks with my neighbor, the steady rhythm of our footsteps matching the early bird song, Sunday cooking that filled the house with the smell of onions and garlic, volunteering extra hours at the library where order and quiet helped me think. And I reflected. I thought about how easy it is for love to become territorial, how some people don't just want to be loved, they want to be the only source of meaning in someone else's life. That kind of love is fragile. One afternoon, Daniel came by again. This time, he knocked and waited. When I opened the door, he smiled, tired but genuine. "I brought lunch," he said, lifting a paper bag. We ate at the table, talking about ordinary things at first: work stress, traffic, a book he'd started reading. Then he set his sandwich down. "I've been thinking about what you said," he told me, "about love not requiring someone else to disappear." I waited. "I realized I was shrinking parts of myself to keep the peace," he continued, "and I didn't even notice. That admission mattered more to me than any apology." "I should have protected you," he said. I shook my head gently. "You don't protect me by fighting your wife. You protect yourself by staying honest." He nodded slowly. "She didn't want counseling," he said. "She said it would make her look bad." That told me everything. "What do you want?" I asked him. He took a long breath. "I want a life where the people I love don't have to compete." The weeks that followed brought clarity. Daniel moved into a short-term rental. Leela stayed in the apartment they'd shared. They spoke through lawyers eventually, not with hostility, but with finality. The marriage ended quietly. No public meltdown, no viral confession. Just two people acknowledging that control and love had been confused and the cost was too high. When Daniel told me it was over, he looked at me with eyes full of grief and growth. He said, "I ignored red flags, but I won't ignore myself again." I hugged him, not tightly, not desperately, just enough to remind him that love doesn't vanish when mistakes are made. As for me, something shifted inside. I stopped waiting to be included. I stopped measuring my worth by proximity. I began to live more expansively, taking a class I'd postponed, reconnecting with friends I'd neglected, laughing without checking whether someone approved. I also learned something unexpected. Forgiveness isn't about letting someone back into your life. It's about letting yourself move forward without dragging resentment behind you. I never received an apology from Leela, and I didn't need one, because my dignity had already been restored, not by confrontation, but by truth. Sitting here now, looking back on everything, I realize that life doesn't always hand us the endings we want. Sometimes the people we love make choices that hurt us, sometimes deeply. And yet, it is in those moments that our strength, our patience, and our dignity are tested the most. I chose not to retaliate with anger. I chose not to erase or humiliate. I chose to let the truth speak for itself. And in doing so, I discovered something I had almost forgotten: the power of presence. Not the presence in a photo, but the presence in someone's heart. Daniel saw me, truly, in the end, and that mattered far more than any social media post ever could. I also learned that love, the kind that lasts, is never about control. It's about trust, respect, and honesty. When someone tries to rewrite your life for their own comfort, it is not your burden to carry. Your burden is only to stay true to yourself. To all of your watching, I ask, have you ever felt invisible in a moment where you should have mattered most? How did you respond? Did you fight? Did you walk away? Or did you let the truth reveal itself in its own time? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Your experiences, your reflections, they matter. And if my story resonated with you, consider subscribing. We share these stories so no one feels alone in their struggles, and so we can all find strength in each other. Remember, you cannot control how others see you, but you can control how you honor yourself. Your presence, your real, authentic presence, is never something anyone should erase. The story ends here with dignity restored, lessons learned, and hope for both mother and son.